The world ended not with fire, but with silence. It began as a fever. At first, no one believed it could spread so fast. Cities tried to contain it, governments spoke of quarantine zones, scientists promised cures. But within months, every adult was coughing blood into their hands. The sickness spared no one past the age of 18. Parents died clutching the hands of their children. Teachers collapsed at their desks. Soldiers dropped their rifles in the streets. The world became a graveyard built on abandoned cars, darkened skyscrapers, and half-empty homes. And the children were left behind. Some tried to rebuild. Most turned to gangs. With no one left to guide them, they painted their faces, wore broken masks, and fought over scraps of food. They became the rulers of the dust. But whispers spread. Somewhere, far from the cities, there was a place where the sickness hadn't reached, a safe zone, guarded by the last scientists, a place where hope still breathed. This is the story of two siblings who dared to believe in that whisper. The city lay in ruins, a carcass of what had once been alive. Skyscrapers stood like hollow bones against a pale sky. Streets were littered with rusted cars, their windows shattered, their doors left open in panic. Time itself seemed frozen, as if the world had stopped breathing the moment the sickness claimed the last adult. Among the rubble moved two figures, a brother and a sister. Ethan was 16, hardened by hunger and fear. His eyes no longer searched for beauty, only for danger and supplies. The weight of survival pressed on his shoulders like an invisible chain. Behind him walked Lily, only 10, still carrying the remnants of childhood in the form of a ragged stuffed rabbit. Where Ethan saw threats, she saw fragments of hope. They had made shelter inside a ruined school, where blackboards still bore faint chalk words, and desks lay overturned as if students had fled mid-lesson. For weeks they had survived here, scavenging scraps from the dead city. But whispers traveled even through silence, whispers of a place beyond the ruins, a sanctuary untouched by disease. Some called it the safe zone. Ethan did not believe in myths, yet desperation left little room for doubt. The gangs were growing bolder. Children in broken masks, the so-called dust rats, prowled the streets at night. To remain in the city was to wait for the inevitable. And so the siblings packed what little they had: 2 dented cans of beans, a failing flashlight, and the rabbit that Lily refused to abandon. On their last night in the school, Ethan paused in front of a chalkboard. Scrawled across it, in the trembling hand of a child long gone, were the words, "Don't forget me." The message lingered in the air like a ghost, a reminder of lives erased too soon. Ethan turned away, knowing there was no one left to remember. And so they stepped into the night. The moonlight painted the city in silver and shadow, turning every alley into a place of threat. Each footstep echoed in the silence, as if the world itself were listening. With nothing but courage and a fragile hope, the two children began their journey into the wasteland, chasing a rumor that might be the last light left in the dark. The siblings left the husk of the school behind and followed the broken streets deeper into the wasteland. The air tasted of rust and ash, and the silence was broken only by the distant screech of metal swinging in the wind. Skies hung heavy with dust, turning the sun into a pale ghost. Days blurred together. They scavenged what they could: a half-empty bottle of water from a toppled vending machine, a can of food pried from a shattered convenience store. Hunger gnawed at their bones, but fear pressed harder. The deeper they walked, the clearer the signs became. Painted symbols marked walls and fences, crude warnings carved in jagged letters. "This is ours. Keep out. The dust rats." Children twisted by survival, united only by cruelty. They wore broken gas masks and goggles scavenged from the dead, their faces hidden, their eyes unreadable. They moved in packs, hunting the weak the way wolves hunted prey. To them, Ethan and Lily would be nothing more than a meal or a game. One evening, while searching the remains of an abandoned pharmacy, the siblings heard the sound of glass crunching under careful feet. Shadows moved outside, circling. Panic rose in Ethan's chest as the silhouettes closed in. The dust rats had found them. The chase was merciless. Through shattered alleys and across empty intersections, the masked children pursued like hunters on familiar ground. Ethan dragged Lily through the ruins, his lungs burning, his legs trembling. Just as the rats closed in, a stone crashed through a nearby window. A girl's voice shouted from the darkness, drawing the pack away for a precious moment. The siblings stumbled into an alley where she waited, a girl not much older than Ethan, her hair tangled, her clothes torn, but her eyes sharp with defiance. She carried no mask, only a rusted pipe gripped in her hands. Without a word, she guided them through a maze of ruins, leading them to safety beneath a collapsed bridge. Her name was Maya. She had once been one of the dust rats, but had escaped, refusing to live by their savagery. Now she wandered the ruins alone, surviving on scraps and secrets. She told them of the city's gangs, of betrayals and hunger, of the constant struggle not only to live, but to remain human in a world that encouraged nothing but cruelty. Ethan did not trust her. He had seen too many faces turn cold when survival was at stake. But Lily looked at Maya with something more than trust. She looked at her as if she were proof that not all kindness had died with the old world. For 3 nights, they traveled together, moving quietly through the city's veins. Around a fire of broken wood, Maya spoke of the safe zone. She had heard the stories too, of scientists, of medicine, of walls that kept the gangs away. But even her voice trembled with doubt. Perhaps it was only a tale whispered to keep hope alive. Still, they pressed on. Each night was colder than the last, and each shadow felt heavier with the thought that the dust rats were never far behind. The city finally gave way to broken highways and fields of ash. In the distance, past a river choked with debris, stretched the outline of a forest, green, alive, impossibly real. It was the first living thing they had seen in weeks. For a moment, the children stood in silence, as if afraid the vision might vanish if they moved. But behind them, the sound returned. The rats had followed, their masks glinting in the dying light of day. They came like phantoms, silent but unstoppable, spreading out across the cracked asphalt. The chase reached its end on a shattered bridge that spanned the dead river. Gaps yawned in the concrete, the metal supports groaning under their weight. On the far side lay the forest, and perhaps the safe zone beyond. Ethan knew the truth as he looked back at the masked figures closing in. There would be no crossing together. The rats would not stop, and someone had to buy the others time. He turned, standing between the gang and the path forward. The weight of 16 years, too few yet far too heavy, settled on his shoulders. Behind him, Lily cried out, but Maya pulled her onward, dragging her toward the other side. The rats surged. Ethan fought with desperation, wielding nothing but a rusted knife and the will to protect. He was swallowed in a tide of shadows and masks, his figure vanishing into the chaos. Lily and Maya ran, stumbling across the final stretch of the bridge. They reached the far side just as the structure groaned and collapsed, sending dust and rubble into the river below. The path back was gone. For a long moment, Lily stood frozen, staring into the smoke, clutching the stuffed rabbit to her chest. The world felt emptier than ever. But then, through the haze, she saw them, faint lights glowing in the forest ahead. A fence line, the silhouettes of people moving beyond it. The safe zone was real. Tears streaked her face as she and Maya staggered forward, their figures swallowed by the trees. Behind them, the city crumbled into silence, another chapter closing in a world of ash. The story of Ethan ended on that bridge. But through Lily, through her fragile hope and the light she carried, humanity endured. For in the wasteland, surrounded by dust and death, a single ember of belief was sometimes all it took to keep the fire alive.